Welcome to the sixth video in this series where we're trying, hopefully, to make a top-down racer in Godot in 2D. In this video, what we're going to do is set the car up so that we can actually lap the track and detect the car lapping the track, and also make an attempt to prevent the player cheating whilst lapping the track. Preventing the player cheating is quite difficult, actually, in driving games. Luckily, it's a lot easier in 2D than it is in 3D. Trackmania, I'm looking at you. So we're going to do this in two steps then. The first one will be adding a start-finish line, which will detect the player crossing it and credit the player with a lap, and later the AI as well. That obviously is open to abuse, so what we'll then do as a second stage is put some verification around the track. So starting off with the start-finish line, we don't really need a separate scene, I don't think, for this. It's a little bit of collision and it needs to notify other things when the players cross the line. So what we'll do is we'll select the root node of track, add a new node, can add an area 2D. I'll call this one start line, and then that's going to have a sprite 2D. And that sprite 2D on the right hand side, you should find in the assets the finishline.png, and then we can also add a collision shape to this as well. So we'll add a collision shape 2D, and again on the right hand side I'll make a rectangle shape 2D. So what I'm going to do is select the root node there of the start line anyway, and with the move tool selected, move that down to where the start is. I can't remember actually with the track path where the path actually starts. I think actually it's here where the oil dropper is. So I'm going to put the start line somewhere before there. It needs clearly rotating, so grab hold of it and press E on the keyboard just to rotate it a little bit, and W, and then just move it a little bit here. And it's a little bit thick as well, I think. So I'm going to grab hold of the sprite 2D, go to the transform, unlink these, and then I think the Y here can be a little bit thinner. I'm not really bothered whether these are squares or not. Then the collision shape here also, let's stretch that so it's actually fitting to the shape here, and we don't need a particularly big collision shape. We're just interested in when we enter it. That should do. So I'll do Ctrl+S to save. Then selecting the start line, let's deal with the collision layers on the right hand side. So it needs to detect the car, so we don't need it to be on any layer, and for the mask we just need the one. It just wants to detect the car, and it's going to then invoke a function on the car when the car crosses. So do Ctrl+S to save. With that done, what we're going to do then when we've detected the car is invoke a function on the car that we're going to call lap completed. So the car is going to then deal with all of that with what later on will be also a race controller. So I'll go into script view actually here, and then open up the car script. Oh, it's already open here on the top left hand side. And then let's have a look. What regions do we have here? So we have the slipping region, and we have the bounce region here. Very good. We have a state region even here, and we've got all the movement stuff here, haven't we? Okay then, so down here then, I'm not going to make a region for this. We can make a new function. I'll call this lap_completed. For now, I'll just type pass inside here. What we want to do is we want to invoke this whenever we've crossed the start-finish line. So let's select the root node of the track, or sorry, open the script of the track here. Now select the start line. I'll go back to 2D view. It's a little bit more visual and easier, I think, to understand where we are. So I've got the track scene selected here. I've got the start line selected here. And then I'm going to go to nodes on the right-hand side, double-click the area entered. Need to make sure here that the track is selected at the top as what we're going to put this function in, and the receiver method will be on start line area entered. So that looks good. So I'm going to click connect. So we can go down here. We can ask if our area is a car, and if it is, then we can do area dot and lap completed. So that should invoke that whenever we cross the start finish line. So we can go back to the car.gd, and rather than this pass, let's just print lap completed. I guess that'll do. And I've accidentally got into there. Right click, close, back into car, and let's print lap completed. Alrighty then, so I'll test this out, what we have here then. So running the game, let's try and avoid the oil slick and cross the start finish line, and there we get lap completed. Now obviously as it is, we have a little bit of a problem. I can turn around and go back the other way and get lap completed, which isn't very good, or go back around here and now have 3 laps completed for having not done very much driving around the track. So we need to sort that out. So I'll press F8 to close this down. Let's then go into 2D view. So to do this controlling or verification of the lap being completed, there are quite a few different approaches to take, and I think we don't need anything overly complicated here actually. What we'll do is we'll make a separate scene, which is going to be surprise in area 2D for collision. That's not going to have a sprite or anything. It'll just have a collision shape. It'll detect when the cars hit it, and when it does, it'll invoke a function on the car and store the ID of the instance of that verification. Then what the car will do is every time it hits a verification, we'll check if it's a new one, it'll add it to its list, and when it completes a lap, it'll check whether it has all of the verifications around the lap. As I say that probably makes very little sense. It's probably easier just to do it. So let's make a new scene here, and I'll add a new node, and that can be in area 2D. I'm going to change the root here to verification. And then Ctrl+S to save, and we can go up one, and we've got a growing list of scenes in here. So new folder, verification, and save. All right then, so here we just need a collision shape actually. So a collision shape 2D, and on the right hand side under inspector, I'll go to shape and make a new rectangle shape 2D. We're going to be reusing this pretty much everywhere. I'm going to make it a reasonable width that will fit pretty much all of the tracks, so probably about 160 wide will do, and the height really doesn't need to be very high at all, so I'm going to make that 5 pixels and do Ctrl+S to save. Next, with the root node selected, let's do the collision maintenance here, so we'll turn the layer off. We don't need it, and we need to detect a car. That'll do. So we've got the layer 1. Then we can add a new script to this as well, directly inheriting area 2D verification.gd and hit create. Inside the script here, we can delete everything from here. And then what we'll do is with the root node selected, go to node on the right hand side, hook up the area entered, and do our usual check here. So we're going to say that if the area is a car, then what we're going to do is add ourselves effectively to the verifications that the car's hit. But what I'd like to do now is show you how we're going to add that. So I'm going to actually print and get underscore instance ID. And we'll leave that there. Let's go into 2D view, back to the track, and select the root node. We'll add a plain old node in here. And let's make something called, I don't know, verifications holder. And this is where we're going to put all of our verifications for being able to get around the lap. So with that selected, let's instantiate then a verification. It's appeared at 0, 0 on the origin of the viewport up there. So I'm going to drag this first one down. And we don't need to be too picky about this because the car has to get through them. And usually 3 are more than enough to guarantee that the quickest way around the lap is indeed to go around the lap properly. So I'll put one of these there. There is one thing to be slightly mindful of. If you look at the collision shape here, don't put it somewhere where it's possible to somehow bang and overlap into it accidentally, say before you've actually come across it in the track. So here, for example, that might be a little bit close actually. So I'll put that here, and I'm pretty sure we'll never get into it when we collide in this wall here. So I'll zoom out then. I'm going to duplicate that by doing Control and D, or you can right click and go to, where are you? Duplicate is in here somewhere. There it is. So Control and D in my case. So I'll Control D that, and using the move tool, move it around here, and then rotate it a little bit to here as well. That should do. And I'll do one more and put that somewhere over here. So really the quickest way around the entire track, or the quickest way to collect all 3 verifications, is for the player now to go the correct way around the track. Yes, they could go in reverse and collect them all, then turn around and go back, but they can have a lap for that anyway because they're really, really slow. So with that done, let's have a look what the verification actually prints out when the car hits one of them. To do that, I'm going to delete this rogue oil slick from here, and then open up the track path, and let's have a look at the oil dropper. I'm going to delete the oil dropper 2 for now. I can always add it back in later on. In the oil dropper here, what are you doing? Let's have a look. Drop time variation, drop margin. I'm going to whack this up to a really high number here, just so that we don't get any oil dropped, or we don't get a large amount of oil dropped anyway. There we go. All right then, so I'm going to run this, and let's see now if we can drive in and see what the output is. So we hit the verification, and you can see there that we've got this 346785. That is an integer, and it's the unique identification of this particular node, the verification node that we've hit. So every scene node that you have inside your game gets given a unique identifier by Godot. That's an integer, and you can use that actually then to uniquely identify things. So you can see that I've gone through all 3 of the verifications and got 3 unique integers here. We can make use of these to understand whether we have 3 unique verifications that the car has gone through. So I press F8 to close that down, close down the output. What we need to be able to do is to tell the car how many verifications it needs to collect, and we'll do that from our track script here. So I'll click on the root node of the track, open up the track script, try and make a little bit of space so you can see things, and then drag and drop the verifications holder into here. And we need access to our car. Now, our car is a direct child of track here. Later on, we're going to have more than one car. So let's select the root node, and we'll add in a new node. And it's not going to surprise you this. We're going to call this one cars holder. And let's get ourselves also a reference to this, so we can get hold of all of the cars. Then we can get hold of our car here and make that a child of cars holder. Note that cars holder here is a node. There's no position or anything like that, so we can't accidentally move this. So the cars position will also be the global position. That applies for the verifications as well, the oil and things like that. So we need to be able to tell the car how many verifications we have. There are a few different ways of doing this. One common one is actually to put the verification scene, actually, if I click node and groups on the right hand side, into a group, and then we'd simply have the car look for all of the scenes that are currently in the game that belong to this group, and it would then set the count. That's perfectly valid, and if you've got quite a bit of experience with Godot and that's the way you do things, then by all means do that. It's not my preferred way of doing things because I don't like things being coupled together like that. So what I'm going to do instead is go to car and then open up the car.gd script, and at the top create a variable that's going to hold the count of the verifications. So I'll take the velocity, for example, here, put this under here. This needs to be an integer. The default value can be 0, and I'll call this one verifications count. And then scrolling down a little bit, right below the ready, I'm going to write a function called setup, and that's going to take in the verifications count. I'm going to call that VC, and that's going to be an integer. Then the return type of this will be void. And inside here, what we'll do is we'll set up the verifications count to be equal to VC. And as I say that, I realize I've not spelled the setup function correctly. That's a little bit better. Then what we're going to do is we're going to keep track of all of the unique IDs of the verification scenes that we've hit. So as well as verifications count, we'll make another variable here. This is going to be an array of integers in this case. Those will actually be the unique IDs. Initially, we can set that to an empty array. Technically, in Godot 4, you don't actually need to do that. What it will do is it will actually initialize this to an empty array anyway. But what we do need to do is get rid of the red here by changing the name. So we won't have their count, we'll have passed. So these are the verifications that we've actually passed. And now what we can do is invoke this setup from inside the track.gd. So go back to track.gd, and we want to get hold of each of the cars that are children of the cars holder. And we'll do this inside the ready. Later on, we're going to be moving this out of here actually into a setup, but for now, we'll leave it inside the ready. So it will say for, and I'll say lowercase car in, and when we want the cars holder dot get children, then we'll say that if the car is of type car, then we'll invoke the setup. So we'll do car.setup, then we can get hold of the verifications holder dot get children dot size. So what should happen is the car is now aware of how many verifications it needs to cross. Now, before we do anything else, I'd actually like to confirm that that is set up correctly, because if this breaks, it gets very confusing. So I'm going to go back to track here because it says that's unsafe. So I'm going to save it. Go to the car.gd. We've got yellow here because we're not using that yet. We will do. But in the setup here, what I'd like to do is just type pass and put a breakpoint next to it. Then run the application. And let's see what we have. So let's have a look. We've got VC3 here, and if I hover over this here, that's also value 3. Excellent, which is correct. So I'm going to stop the application and close down the debugger and get rid of the breakpoint as well. So now that we have the count of the verifications, what we can do is we can deal with what happens when we actually hit one. So obviously we're going to invoke a function on the car from the verification, as we have with the other things we're doing. So we'll write ourselves a new function, and we'll call that function hit verification. And here what we're going to do is take the v underscore id, or really I should type verification underscore d, shouldn't I? I can be a little bit lazy with these. So verification id is an integer, and then the return type is going to be void. And what we'll do here is we will add this verification ID to our list of past verifications if it's not already in it. So we can say if our verification ID that was received is not in our verifications past, then we'll add it to verifications past. So Control is to save. Let's now go to verification and actually invoke this hit verification with the ID. So I'll go to verification.gd instead of this print statement here, which whilst good is not very useful. So we'll do area dot, and then we can do the hit verification, and we can send in then the get instance ID. And that should add to the car, as it hits the verifications, the unique IDs, and it shouldn't duplicate them. So before we do anything else, let's check that as well. So I'm going to go to car.gd, and we do the appending here, and I'd like a breakpoint after it. So we'll do pass here, put a breakpoint here, and then run the application. So let's try and see if we can hit a verification here. And we did, we've hit the breakpoint, excellent. And if I hover over here, we've got one verification passed in the array, then we can continue here. And what I'm going to do is turn around and try and go back, and we shouldn't now hit the breakpoint. And we haven't. I can see that we're not hitting the breakpoint. So we're only allowed to store on this lap that particular verification. At the moment I say on this lap, we're never clearing them. We will do later. There we go. For the second one, we've hit the breakpoint. So if I hover over here, we've now got 2 of them, which is good. And then finally, I guess the third one is working as well. So I'll just check that. So going to the third one, again, we've hit the breakpoint here. We've now got 3 of those IDs. And the main point here is we shouldn't now be able to, whatever's going on there, we shouldn't be able to turn around. Okay, we can't turn around and actually duplicate any of the verifications. Excellent. So I'll press F8 to close that down, close down the debugger, and get rid of this breakpoint. So we can ensure now that if the size of the verifications passed array is equal to the count of the verifications, then we've definitely been round the lap. Or we've gone really the long way round, in which case we'll give the car a lap anyway. So in the lap completed then, instead of just happily printing it, what we'll do is we'll make that check. So we'll say that if the verifications count is equal to, and the verifications passed.size, then we've managed to complete a lap, so we can print this here. And then what we'll do for some extra nastiness here is we'll actually clear the verifications passed when we've had a lap completed. So if the player is doing something strange, like driving around in strange directions and crisscrossing, every time they crisscross the lap completed, it'll reset the verifications passed array. And what should happen now when we test the application is we should not be able to get lap completed unless we've gone through all of the verifications. And that has a nice side effect as well, actually, of not counting a lap when the race starts. Because when we start the race, we'll start behind the start-finish line. And by doing the code like we have, we won't get immediately a lap counted because we have to at least get through all of the verifications. So what I'm going to do now is have a quick fade and come back, but I'm actually going to run the application and quickly drive around the lap, try and break it and just check that the checks are working properly. So I'll be right back. So back after messing around a little bit with this, and I've not been able to break it, at least not in a way that gets me to lap quicker than just driving normally around the track. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm sure if you found a clever way to break it, you'll let me know in the comments anyway, but I'm quite happy with how it is. So I'll press F8 to close that down and close down the output. And I think for this video, that's a good place to stop. The next step is to start recording actually lap times and how many laps we've actually achieved during the race. And for that, we're going to actually write a new scene, which is going to be a race controller, which is going to go as a child of our track. And that's going to have the responsibility of managing what all of the cars are doing whilst they're on the track. So we'll look at starting that in the next video.